My sister Tiffany banned my husband from her rehearsal dinner to make room for a stranger, claiming they were over capacity. She didn't know I controlled the non-refundable honeymoon booking she was bragging about. One click later, her dream trip vanished. This is where the real drama starts, and trust me, the landing in Bali is worth the wait. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the fallout. I'm writing this from my new patio. Where are you reading from today? I was sitting in my car, parked in the driveway of my own home, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles had turned a translucent shade of white. The air conditioning was blasting, fighting off the humid July heat, but I felt cold. Bone-deep cold. It was the kind of chill that settles in not when the temperature drops, but when your reality does. My phone sat in the cup holder, the screen dark now, but the voice that had just come through it was still echoing in the confined space of the SUV. "It's just numbers, Harriet. You're making this emotional, and I need you to be logistical." That was my sister, Tiffany. 24 years old, glowing with the radiance of a bride-to-be, and currently wielding the emotional maturity of a toddler with a loaded handgun. I took a breath, unbuckled my seatbelt, and just sat there. I couldn't go inside yet. If I went inside, I would have to look at Mark. I would have to look at my husband, the man who had spent the last 3 weekends building custom wooden arbors for Tiffany's garden reception because she wanted a rustic chic vibe but didn't want to pay rental prices. The man who had driven her to the airport at 4:00 a.m. 3 times in the last month for her various bachelorette pre-trips, because she didn't trust Uber drivers. I looked at the house. Mark was inside, probably grading papers. He was a high school history teacher, the kind of man who possessed a quiet, stoic patience that I often envied. He loved my family. He made excuses for them constantly. When my mother forgot his birthday, he said she was busy. When Tiffany critiqued his clothes, he laughed it off as her being fashion-forward. He had no idea what she had just said to me. I picked up the phone again, unlocking it just to reread the text message she had sent to confirm the phone call, ensuring there was a paper trail of her cruelty. Rehearsal dinner list: Dad, Mom, me, groom, best man +1, Sarah plus Tyler, Harriet. One name was missing. I closed my eyes, remembering the conversation that had just ended 30 seconds ago. "Tiffany," I had said, my voice shaking slightly despite my best efforts to channel my courtroom persona. "You sent the head count to the caterer. You left Mark off." "I know," she had replied, her voice breezy, accompanied by the sound of rustling fabric. She was probably trying on the veil again. "That's what I'm calling about. The venue for the rehearsal dinner is that cute little wine cellar place, remember? They have a strict fire code capacity. We're capped at 20 people. It's tiny, intimate." "Okay," I said, waiting for the solution. "So who are you cutting?" "Well, we can't cut the bridal party," she said, as if explaining gravity to a child. "And obviously Mom and Dad have to be there, and the groom's parents. So we were looking at the list, and honestly, Harriet, Mark is just... he's quiet. He doesn't really bring the party energy we want for the kickoff, you know? Plus, he's just family by marriage. It made the most sense to have him sit this one out. He can order a pizza or something." I had stopped breathing for a moment. "Sit this one out? He's my husband. We've been married for 10 years. He's been in your life since you were 14. "God, don't be dramatic," she snapped. "It's just dinner. He's coming to the wedding the next day. It's not a big deal unless you make it one." "Tiffany," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I see Sarah on this list, and I see Tyler next to her name." "Yeah, Tyler, he's so fun. Sarah met him at that club last weekend. He's a DJ or something. He's going to bring great vibes." "You are prioritizing a man Sarah met 7 days ago over my husband of a decade." "It's about the dynamic, Harriet. Tyler is fun. Mark is... Mark, look, I have to go, the florist is calling. Just tell him it's a space issue. Don't make me the bad guy." She hung up. I stared at the dashboard. The sheer audacity was physically painful. It wasn't just the exclusion, it was the casual dismissal of Mark's worth. He can order a pizza. I looked down at my hands. I was a corporate contract lawyer. I spent my days finding loopholes, negotiating terms, and reading the fine print that people ignored at their peril. I was known for being cool under pressure. But right now, my hands were trembling with a rage so hot it felt like I had swallowed a coal. I wasn't going to tell Mark yet. I couldn't. I needed to process this. I needed to understand how my little sister, the girl whose college tuition I had paid off so she wouldn't have debt, the girl whose car insurance was currently on auto pay from my bank account, could be this heartless. But as I sat there, the shock began to recede, replaced by something sharper, something colder. The betrayal wasn't just the dinner. It was the realization that to Tiffany, Mark, and I weren't family. We were resources. We were logistics. And when the resource wasn't needed, it was discarded. I opened the glove box and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Inside was the itinerary for the Bali project, my wedding gift to her. A 5-star, all-inclusive, 2-week honeymoon in Nusa Dua. Private villa, butler service, business class flights. I had spent months curating it, pulling strings, using my premium travel rewards points that I had hoarded for years. I looked at the confirmation codes. Tiffany thought this trip was a given. She thought it was her birthright because I was the successful sister. I rubbed my thumb over the paper. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself, the diagnosis that our relationship was terminal. I finally mustered the strength to exit the car. I smoothed down my skirt, fixed my hair in the side mirror, and put on my everything is fine face. It was a mask I wore often, usually for Tiffany's benefit, protecting my parents and Mark from her worst tantrums. When I walked into the kitchen, the smell of garlic and rosemary hit me. Mark was at the stove, an apron tied around his waist, stirring a pot of sauce. He looked up and smiled, the kind of genuine, eye-crinkling smile that usually melted my stress away. "Hey," he said, tapping the wooden spoon on the side of the pot. "You're home late. Rough day with the merger contracts." "Something like that," I said, dropping my bag on the counter. I walked over and hugged him from behind, burying my face in his back. He smelled like sawdust and basil. He was solid, real. "You okay?" he asked, his hand coming back to rest on my arm. "Just tired," I lied. "How was school?" "Good. Finally got the sophomores to understand the causes of the First World War. It only took 3 weeks," he chuckled. "Oh, by the way, Tiffany texted me." My blood froze. I pulled back. "She did." "Yeah," Mark said, turning around to face me, leaning back against the stove. He didn't look angry. He looked resigned. "She said there was a mix-up with the venue for the rehearsal dinner. Said the fire marshal is being a nightmare about capacity." He was defending her. Even now, when she was spitting in his face, he was interpreting it as rain. "She told you that?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Yeah, she said she felt terrible, but they had to cut the list down to essential bridal party only. She asked if I mind sitting it out." Mark shrugged, forcing a small smile. "I told her it's fine, Harriet. Really, I don't need a fancy dinner. I can stay here, catch up on grading, maybe watch that documentary I've been meaning to see. It saves us a babysitter for the dog, right?" I stared at him. "Essential bridal party only," I repeated. "Right, parents, bridesmaids, groomsmen, it makes sense. Space is tight." "Mark," I said, a dangerous edge creeping into my voice. "Did she tell you who else is going?" He frowned slightly. "No, just the group." "Sarah is going," I said. "Well, Sarah is the maid of honor," Mark pointed out reasonably. "And Tyler is going." Mark blinked. "Tyler, who is Tyler?" "Exactly," I said, walking over to the fridge to get a bottle of water because my throat felt like sandpaper. "Tyler is the guy Sarah met at a club last Saturday. He is Tiffany's idea of essential bridal party." The silence in the kitchen was heavy. Mark looked down at the floor, then back at me. The hurt was there now, visible in the way his shoulders slumped just a fraction. He wasn't stupid. He understood exactly what that meant. It wasn't about space. It was about rank. And in Tiffany's world, a stranger with vibes outranked the brother-in-law who had built her wedding arch. "Oh," Mark said softly, "I see." She lied to you, I said, slamming the water bottle down on the counter a little too hard. She lied about the fire marshal. She just didn't want you there because she thinks you're, what was it? Not party energy enough. Mark let out a short, dry laugh. Well, she's not wrong. I'm not exactly a club DJ. That's not the point, I snapped, turning on him, though my anger wasn't directed at him. The point is the disrespect. Mark, I pay for her phone, I paid for her dress. I put the deposit down on the venue she's kicking you out of. Harriet, Mark said, stepping forward and taking my hands. His palms were warm. Stop, it's her week. She's stressed. Bridezilla mode, right? We knew this was coming. If I make a scene about not being invited to a dinner, I look like the petty one. Let's just let her have it. It's easier. It's not easier, I whispered. It's enabling. It's just one dinner, he insisted, squeezing my hands. I really don't mind. As long as I'm with you at the wedding, it's fine. I looked at this man, this incredibly decent, kind man, and I felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it almost frightened me. He was willing to be erased to keep the peace. He was willing to be treated like furniture to spare me a conflict. But Tiffany had forgotten one crucial thing. She saw me as the banker. She saw me as the big sister who cleaned up messes and wrote checks and smoothed things over. She thought my love for her was a bottomless well that she could poison without consequence. She had forgotten that I was a contract lawyer. I looked over Mark's shoulder at my laptop bag sitting on the dining table. Inside, tucked in the front pocket, was the folder for Bali. You're right, I said to Mark, forcing my facial muscles to relax into a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It's just one dinner. We shouldn't make a scene. Mark exhaled, relieved. Exactly, we'll take the high road. The high road, I agreed. Go check the sauce. I need to send a few emails before dinner. I walked to the table and unzipped my bag. I didn't open the work laptop. Instead, I pulled out the glossy brochure for the Ayana Resort and Spa, Bali. I looked at the photos of the cliffside pool, the private villa I had selected because Tiffany had once said it was her dream aesthetic. I turned the brochure over. There, stapled to the back, was the receipt, $12,000, fully paid. But directly underneath, the paid stamp was a small paragraph of text I had memorized. Cancellation policy. 100% refund, available up to 48 hours prior to check-in if booked through Platinum Rewards member portal. We were 3 days away from the wedding, 5 days away from their flight. I had time to understand why this rehearsal dinner was the straw that broke the camel's back. You have to understand the sheer weight of the straw bale I had been carrying for a decade. Our father was a sweet man, but terrible with money. Our mother was passive, preferring to bury her head in the sand rather than confront any unpleasant reality. When I graduated law school and landed my first associate job at a top-tier firm, I didn't just move out. I became the family's financial life raft. I didn't mind it at first. I was proud. I helped with the mortgage when Dad got laid off. I paid for Mom's dental surgery. And Tiffany was the baby. She was 14 when I started making real money. I bought her prom dress. I bought her first car. I paid her tuition for a liberal arts degree she used for 6 months before deciding she wanted to be an event planner, which really meant she wanted to plan parties for herself using other people's money. She was currently between jobs, a state she had been in for 2 years. Her fiancé, Chad, was a nice enough guy, a gym trainer with a blindingly white smile and absolutely no savings. So, when the wedding planning started, the invoice naturally slid across the table to me. We just want it to be perfect, Harry, Tiffany had said, using the nickname I hated. And you know Mom and Dad can't do it. And you do so well, it's a write-off, isn't it? It wasn't a write-off, but I paid. I paid for the venue $8,000. I paid for the photographer $4,500. I paid for the dress $3,000. I did it because I wanted her to be happy. I did it because that's what big sisters do. But the more I gave, the less she saw me. I became a walking wallet. The next morning, 2 days before the wedding, I went to my parents' house to drop off the final checks for the vendors. I walked in through the back door without knocking, a habit from childhood. I heard voices in the living room. "I just don't want him in the photos, Sarah," Tiffany was saying. I froze in the hallway. "Who, Mark?" Sarah asked. Sarah was Tiffany's best friend since high school, a girl who thrived on drama and mimicked Tiffany's mean girl energy perfectly. "Yeah," Tiffany sighed. "He's just so beige, look at this mood board." I heard the rustle of paper. The aesthetic is gilded glamour. Mark is going to show up in one of those corduroy jackets he wears, looking like a geography teacher, and it's going to throw off the whole vibe of the head table. That's why I need Tyler there. Tyler has that jagged, edgy look. He has tattoos. "Did Harriet freak out about the rehearsal dinner?" Sarah asked. "Oh, totally," Tiffany laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. "She got all lawyer-y on me, but she'll get over it. She always does. She knows that if she pulls out, she ruins Mom and Dad's day too. She's trapped by her own guilt complex. It's actually really convenient." My stomach turned. She wasn't just selfish. She was calculated. She had weaponized my love for our parents against me. She knew I wouldn't cause a scene because I didn't want to upset Dad's heart condition or Mom's anxiety. "Besides, Tiffany continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Wait until she finds out about the seating chart for the reception." "What did you do?" Sarah giggled. "I moved them," Tiffany said. "I put Harriet and Mark at table 9. Table 9? The overflow table. The table by the kitchen doors where they put the distant cousins and the people you had to invite but didn't actually want." "No way," Sarah shrieked. "She paid for the wedding and you put her at table 9. "I had to," Tiffany whined defensively. "I needed space at the front for Chad's frat brothers. They're going to be rowdy, and I need that energy near the dance floor. Harriet and Mark are buzzkills. They'll be happier in the back where they can talk about, I don't know, history and contracts." "Is she bringing the honeymoon tickets?" Sarah asked. "She better," Tiffany said. "I've been posting about Bali for weeks. If she screws that up, I will never forgive her. But she won't. Like I said, she's desperate for me to like her." I stood there in the hallway, holding the envelope with the final vendor checks. The checks that would ensure the flowers arrived and the band played. She thought I was desperate for her to like me. She was wrong. I had been desperate for her to love me. I had been buying her affection for years, thinking that if I just gave enough, she would eventually treat me like a sister instead of a sponsor. But hearing her laugh about putting me at table 9, the table by the kitchen, at the event I had bankrolled, hearing her call my husband beige and plan to hide him away. Something inside me didn't just break, it evaporated. The guilt, the obligation, the need to be the good sister, it all vanished, leaving behind a clarity so sharp it could cut glass. I looked at the envelope in my hand. Inside were the checks for the caterer and the florist. I wasn't going to tear them up. No, that would cause a scene. That would make me the villain. Tiffany wanted a gilded glamour wedding. She would get it. I would let her have her day. I would let her dance with Chad's frat brothers. I would let her sneer at my husband. I backed out of the hallway, silent as a ghost. I opened the back door and closed it again, this time loudly. "Hello," I called out, my voice bright and cheery. "Anyone home?" Tiffany scrambled into the kitchen, looking flushed. "Harriet, I didn't hear you pull up." "Just dropping off the final checks," I said, smiling. I held up the envelope. "Oh, thank God," Tiffany said, reaching for it. "You're the best, Harry, really." She snatched the envelope from my hand. She didn't look at my eyes. She only looked at the money. "Oh, and Tiffany," I said, keeping my tone light. "Yeah," she was already opening the envelope to count the checks. "I was thinking about the rehearsal dinner," I said. "You're right. Mark and I shouldn't impose. It's better if we just see you at the wedding." Tiffany looked up, her face breaking into a genuine smile of relief. "Really? You're not mad?" "Not at all," I said. "It's your day. The aesthetic is important." "Exactly," she beamed. I knew you'd understand, you're such a lifesaver. I try, I said. I turned to leave. As I walked to the door, I saw her turn back to Sarah, mouthing the words "I told you so." She thought she had won. She thought she had managed me. She had no idea that I had just mentally reallocated the $12,000 Bali budget. I walked to my car, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app. It was time to make a withdrawal. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, the blue light of my monitor illuminating the room as I transitioned from sister to litigator. Tiffany had made a specific claim. The fire marshal set a strict capacity of 20 people. In the world of contracts and liability, specific claims are easily verifiable facts, and verifiable facts are the bedrock of any good cross-examination. I pulled up the website for the Velvet Cellar, the venue Tiffany had chosen for the rehearsal dinner. It was a trendy, exposed brick spot downtown, the kind that charged $18 for a cocktail and served artisanal flatbreads on slate tiles. I navigated to their private events page. There it was in bold, sans serif font, the reserve room, perfect for intimate gatherings. Seated capacity, 45. Standing reception, 60. 45. Tiffany's list had 20 people. Even with the essential bridal party, plus Mark, we would have been at 21. She had a buffer of 24 seats. She hadn't just excluded Mark. She had invented a legal restriction to do it, knowing I would likely respect a safety code. It was a lie designed specifically to exploit my respect for rules. I needed more than a website screenshot. I needed confirmation. I picked up my phone and dialed the venue. It was 10:00 a.m. on a Friday. Velvet Cellar, events desk, a cheerful voice answered. "Hi," I said, adopting my professional, "I want to book a corporate retreat." Voice, "I'm calling regarding the reserve room. I'm looking to host a small dinner there next month, but I'm worried about space. Is it true the fire marshal caps the room at 20? The event coordinator laughed. 20? Oh no, ma'am. We can seat 50 comfortably, though we recommend 45 for better flow. 20 would feel empty in there. I see, I said, typing furiously. And just to clarify, is there any construction or temporary restriction this weekend? Maybe a specific event that has a lower cap? You mean the Miller Davis rehearsal dinner? She asked. My heart skipped a beat. Yes, actually, I'm a guest for that one. Oh, no, no restrictions. In fact, the bride called last week to reduce the table count. She asked us to remove 2 tables to create a mingling zone near the bar. She said she wanted it to feel exclusive. I felt the blood rushing in my ears. She had deliberately removed tables. She had physically altered the room layout to justify excluding my husband. Thank you, I said, my voice icy. That's very helpful. I hung up. I had the leverage. I had the proof of the lie, but knowing Tiffany, she would spin it. She would say I was spying or that I was being controlling. I needed to see it. I needed to witness the exclusive vibe myself. I walked out to the garage where Mark was working. He was sanding a piece of reclaimed oak, dust motes dancing in the sunbeams around him. He looked peaceful. He had no idea his wife was currently preparing to detonate a nuclear device in the center of her family dynamic. Hey, he said, turning off the sander. You okay? You've been in the office all morning. Just wrapping up some loose ends, I said. Mark, about tonight. I'm fine, Harriet, he said quickly, raising his hands in surrender. I ordered the ingredients for a homemade pizza. I'm going to watch the Ken Burns series. I'm genuinely looking forward to a quiet night. I know, I said, walking over and brushing sawdust off his shoulder. But I'm going to drop by the venue. Just for a minute, I have a gift I need to give Tiffany before the wedding. Mark frowned. Don't go there to fight, Harriet. It's not worth it. I'm not going to fight, I promised, and I meant it. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to verify. I went back inside and opened my safe. I took out the envelope containing the Bali itinerary. This was the gift Tiffany was expecting. the trip of a lifetime, 2 weeks of luxury that cost more than Mark's car. I also printed out a second document, the cancellation policy I had highlighted the night before. I put the itinerary in a thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with wax, very aesthetic. I put the cancellation policy in my purse. I wasn't just investigating the venue capacity. I was investigating my sister's soul. I was going to give her one last chance to be a decent human being. If she showed even a flicker of regret, even a moment of "I wish Mark was here," I might reconsider. But if she didn't? I looked at the clock. The cancellation window for a full refund closed at 5:00 p.m. on the day of the wedding. I had 24 hours to decide if Tiffany Miller deserved a honeymoon or a lesson. The velvet cellar was dimly lit, smelling of expensive cologne and truffle oil. I hadn't RSVP'd, no, officially. I had simply gone silent after our phone call, so walking in wasn't technically crashing, though I knew Tiffany would see it that way. I stood in the entryway of the reserve room, obscured by a large potted fern, and watched. The room was cavernous. The coordinator had been right. Even with the tables spread out, there was enough empty space to host a small dance class. The capacity issue was a laughable fabrication. At the center of the room, holding a glass of champagne, was Tiffany. She looked stunning in a white cocktail dress I had paid for. Next to her was Sarah, her maid of honor, and draped over Sarah was a man I assumed was Tyler. Tyler was wearing a backwards baseball cap and a t-shirt that said "I'm with the DJ." At a rehearsal dinner, at a venue with a dress code. I watched as Tyler said something loud, causing Sarah to shriek with laughter. Then, I saw Tyler clap my father on the back hard. My father, a man of quiet dignity, flinched but smiled politely. That was Mark's seat. That loud, unkempt stranger was eating the meal I was paying for, sitting in the seat that belonged to my husband. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blazer, and stepped into the light. "Harriet." The room went silent. Tiffany's smile faltered, then reassembled itself into a tight, plastic grimace. She walked over to me, her heels clicking on the polished concrete floor. "I thought you weren't coming," she said, her voice low. "I thought you were staying home with, you know." "Mark," I said. "His name is Mark." "Right, Mark," she waved her hand dismissively. "Well, we're kind of in the middle of toasts. It's a bit awkward." "I'm sure it is," I said, my voice projecting just enough for the nearby tables to hear. I looked around the room, making a show of inspecting the walls. "It's a beautiful room, Tiffany, very spacious." Her eyes narrowed. "It's cozy." "It fits 50, I said, locking eyes with her. "I called the venue manager this morning. She told me the capacity is 50. She also told me you asked them to remove tables to make it look smaller." Tiffany's face flushed a deep, ugly red. The blushing bride act dropped instantly, replaced by the petulant glare I had known since childhood. "Why are you checking up on me?" she hissed, stepping closer so our parents wouldn't hear. "Are you auditing my wedding now? Is that it? You think because you wrote a few checks you own me?" "I think that because I wrote all the checks, my husband deserves a seat and a plate of chicken," I countered calmly. "You lied, Tiffany. You didn't cut him for safety. You cut him because you're ashamed of him." "I'm not ashamed of him," she spat, though her eyes darted to where Tyler was currently showing Chad something on his phone, looking utterly out of place. Look, Mark is a downer, okay? He sits there and talks about history and asks people what they're reading. It's boring. Tyler is fun. Tyler brings energy. This is my weekend. I shouldn't have to manage your husband's social awkwardness just to make you feel better." "He's not socially awkward," I said, feeling that cold rage harden in my chest again. "He's an adult, unlike some of your guests." "Stop being jealous?" Tiffany raised her voice, and this time people turned to look. Sarah was watching us with a smirk. "God, you are so jealous that I'm having fun and you're stuck in a boring marriage with a boring man. Just leave, Harriet. Go home to Mark. Leave the gift if you brought it and go." She pointed to the gift table near the door. "Leave the gift," she repeated. It was the ultimate distillation of our relationship. I don't want you here. I don't want your husband here, but leave the money. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the entitlement, the cruelty, the absolute lack of gratitude. Okay, I said softly, I'll leave. I reached into my bag and pulled out the cream-colored envelope. Tiffany's eyes locked onto it. She knew what this was, the Bali confirmation, the prize. Thank you, she said, snatching it from my hand. I knew you wouldn't ruin this for me. I would never ruin your wedding, Tiffany, I said, a small, sad smile playing on my lips. I want you to have exactly the day you deserve. I turned and walked out. I didn't say goodbye to our parents. I couldn't bear to see them sitting there, watching this happen and saying nothing. As I walked back to my car, I didn't cry. I felt lighter. The investigation was over. The verdict was in. She had chosen the aesthetic. She had chosen the lie, and in doing so, she had signed the cancellation papers herself. The wedding day dawned with a bright, mocking sunshine. It was the kind of perfect July day that brides pray for: low humidity, blue skies, a gentle breeze. I spent the morning helping Mark get ready. He put on his suit, a classic charcoal gray that Tiffany had called drab, and he looked handsome, distinguished. He fixed my necklace, kissing the back of my neck. You ready for this? He asked. As I'll ever be, I replied. We arrived at the ceremony and I played my part. I sat in the front row. I handed Mom tissues when she cried. I held Mark's hand. When Tiffany walked down the aisle, she looked beautiful. I won't deny that. But when she looked at me, there was no warmth, just a smug satisfaction. She had gotten her way. She had the wedding, the dress, the vibe, and the honeymoon envelope was safely in her possession. Then came the reception. We walked into the ballroom, a massive, converted barn draped in white silk and crystals. It was, admittedly, spectacular. My bank account knew exactly how spectacular it was. We found the seating chart. It was a large, gold-framed mirror with names written in calligraphy. I scanned the top tables. Table 1, head table, bride, groom, Sarah, Tyler. Tyler, the guy she met a week ago, was at the head table. I scanned down, table 2, table 3, nothing. I finally found us. Table 9, Harriet, Mark, Great-Aunt Edna, Cousin Mike, the one with the conspiracy theories, and 3 people I didn't recognize. We walked to table 9. It was located in the far back corner, directly next to the swinging double doors of the kitchen. Every time a server walked out with a tray of appetizers, the doors swung open and hit the back of Mark's chair. Whoops, sorry, a waiter said, squeezing past Mark. Mark had to stand up and scoot his chair in until his chest was touching the table, just to let the staff pass. It's fine, Mark said to me, his smile tight. Really, Harriet, it's fine. It wasn't fine. I looked across the room. The head table was elevated on a platform. Tiffany was laughing, holding court. Tyler was wearing sunglasses indoors, popping a bottle of champagne that sprayed onto the floor. Sarah pointed at us, at table 9 by the kitchen, and whispered something to Tiffany. They both laughed. That was it, that was the moment. It wasn't just the exclusion, it was the humiliation. They were enjoying putting us in the corner. They were relishing the power play. I pulled out my phone. It was 4:15 p.m. The reception dinner was about to be served. The cancellation window for the Bali resort closed at 5:00 p.m. I had 45 minutes. I need to use the restroom, I told Mark. I walked out of the ballroom, past the gift table, past the guest book. I found a quiet bench in the garden outside. I opened the airline app first. Booking reference, TF Bali 01, cancel booking. Are you sure? This action cannot be undone. I didn't hesitate. I tapped yes. Refund processed, $4,200 credited to account ending in 8890. Next, the resort, the Iona Resort and Spa, manage reservation. Cancel. Reason for cancellation, I typed in, gift no longer required. Refund processed, $8,500 credited to account ending in 8890. It was done. In less than 2 minutes, I had recouped nearly $13,000. I sat there for a moment, listening to the muffled bass of the music coming from the barn. The money was back in my account, but Tiffany still had the envelope. She still had the glossy itinerary. She still thought she was going. I walked back inside. The speeches were starting. I took my seat at table 9, just as the best man finished a drunken, rambling story about Chad's college days. Then Tiffany stood up. She tapped her glass with a fork. "I just want to say thank you to everyone," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone. "Especially to my parents for everything." She didn't mention me, not once. She didn't mention the sister who paid for the microphone she was holding. She continued, "And I am so excited for tomorrow. Chad and I are heading off to our dream honeymoon in Bali. It's going to be magical." The room cheered. Tiffany looked directly at me and winked. It was a power move. She was publicly claiming the gift, ensuring I couldn't take it back without looking like a monster. She had no idea the reservation number in her envelope was already dead. After the speeches, dinner was served. At table 9, we were served last. By the time our plates arrived, cold chicken Mark was quiet. He was watching Tyler, who was now shirtless on the dance floor, wearing Tiffany's veil. "He seems fun," Mark said dryly. Suddenly, Tiffany appeared at our table. She smelled of wine and expensive perfume. "Hey," she shouted over the music. "Are you guys having fun? Sorry about the spot, we just had so many last-minute ads." "It's fine," Mark said. "Listen, Harriet." Tiffany leaned in, putting a hand on my shoulder. Her grip was tight. "I need a favor. The band requires a cash tip at the end of the night. Dad forgot his wallet. Can you run to the ATM and pull out like $500? I'll pay you back." She would never pay me back. She had just publicly snubbed me, humiliated my husband, and now she was asking for more money. I looked at her hand on my shoulder. Then I looked at Mark, squeezed into his corner by the kitchen doors. I reached into my purse. "I don't have cash," I said, my voice calm, loud enough for the cousins at the table to hear. "But I have something else for you." "Oh," Tiffany's eyes lit up. "Did you bring an extra check?" "No," I said. I pulled out my phone and opened the email notification I had just received. Subject, cancellation confirmed, Ayana Resort Bali. "I realized I made a mistake with your gift," I said, standing up. "I wanted to make sure you had the full experience you deserve." "What are you talking about?" Tiffany laughed nervously. "You said Mark wasn't welcome because he didn't fit the aesthetic," I said, smiling the same smile she had given me at the rehearsal dinner. "And you were right. He doesn't fit this. And neither do I, so I'm removing us from the equation entirely." "Harriet, the band needs a tip," she snapped. "Stop making this about you." "I'm not," I said. "I'm making it about the honeymoon. You might want to check the reservation status before you head to the airport tomorrow. I'd hate for you to arrive and find out there's no room." Tiffany froze. "What did you do?" "I treated you exactly how you treated us," I whispered. "I prioritized my budget. Have a great night, Tiffany." I grabbed Mark's hand. "Come on, we're leaving." "Harriet," she screamed as I turned away. "Harriet, you can't." But I could, and I did. We walked out of the barn, past the cake, past the gift table, and into the cool night air. The drive home from the wedding venue was the longest and shortest 40 minutes of my life. Mark drove. I sat in the passenger seat, my heels kicked off, watching the dark silhouette of the trees blur past the window. My phone was vibrating incessantly in my lap, a constant, angry buzz against my thigh, but I didn't flip it over. I knew who it was. It was Tiffany. It was my mother. It was probably Sarah, sending drunk, incomprehensible texts defending the bride. "Did you mean it?" Mark asked quietly, breaking the silence that had stretched since we pulled out of the venue's gravel lot. His eyes were fixed on the road, illuminated by the dashboard lights. "Mean what?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "That you canceled it, the honeymoon, the villa." I took a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs, tasting the residual adrenaline. I meant every word. I canceled it at 4:20 p.m. The money is already back in our savings account. Mark let out a sound that was half laugh, half exhale. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. She's going to go nuclear, Harriet. You know that. She thinks you're bluffing. She's going to get on that plane tomorrow thinking you'll fix it while she's in the air. I know, I said, staring at the unopened notifications on my screen. She's counted on me fixing it for 10 years. She thinks I'm too weak to follow through. She thinks my love for Mom and Dad will force me to cave. And will it? Mark glanced at me. If she calls you from Denpasar airport crying, will you rebook it? I looked at my husband. I looked at the man who had been relegated to a corner table by the kitchen, treated like an embarrassing accessory to be hidden away. I thought about the rehearsal dinner lie. I thought about Tyler sitting in the seat of honor. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm done, Mark. The bank is closed. We arrived home and turned off our phones. We drank wine on our back porch, listening to the crickets, reclaiming the peace that the wedding had stolen from us. The next 24 hours were a masterclass in denial. I turned my phone on the next morning to a barrage of messages, but I didn't reply. I saw Tiffany's Instagram stories. She had posted a photo of her and Chad at the airport holding champagne flutes in the lounge, which I knew Chad couldn't afford. The caption read, "Haters gonna hate, but we're Bali bound. Airplane, #dream honeymoon by Felicia." She hadn't checked. She was so arrogant, so convinced of her own importance, that she hadn't even bothered to log into the airline app or call the resort to confirm the reservation code in the envelope. She assumed my threat was just dramatic flair. She assumed the gift was an immutable law of physics. She was flying 12,000 miles into a void. The call came at 3:00 a.m. on Monday morning. I was asleep, but the piercing ring of the landline, which only our parents used, jolted me awake. Mark groaned and rolled over. I fumbled for the handset on the nightstand. "Hello." "You psychopath." The voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. It was Tiffany. She was screaming, her voice cracking with hysteria. In the background, I could hear the chaotic, distinctive noise of a busy international arrival terminal, announcements in Indonesian, honking taxis, the din of confused travelers. "Hello, Tiffany," I said, sitting up and clicking the bedside lamp on. "I assume you've landed." "There is no driver," she shrieked. "We've been standing at the pickup zone for 45 minutes. I called the hotel. I gave them the booking reference. Do you know what they told me? Do you?" "I imagine they told you the reservation was canceled by the cardholder," I said calmly. "They said IT doesn't exist." She was sobbing now, that ugly, gasping cry of a child who has dropped their ice cream. "They said it was canceled 2 days ago. Harriet, fix this. Fix it right now. We are exhausted, it's humid, Chad is freaking out, and we have nowhere to go." "I told you," I said, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. "I told you at the reception. I canceled the gift. You didn't believe me." "I thought you were just being a bitch," she screamed. "I didn't think you'd actually strand us in a foreign country. Do you know how much a villa costs here last minute? We don't have that kind of money. We maxed out our cards on the upgrade to business class." "You upgraded to business class?" I asked. "With what money?" "We used the wedding cash," she yelled. "Because we didn't think we'd have to pay for the hotel. Harriet, please, stop this. It's not funny. Put the card back on file. Rebook the room. I'll apologize, okay? I'm sorry I put Mark at table 9. I'm sorry, just fix it." It was the apology I had waited years for, but it was hollow. It was currency being spent to buy a service, not genuine remorse. "I can't fix it, Tiffany," I said. "The money is gone. I used it to pay off the remainder of my car loan this morning. It's spent." There was a silence on the line so profound, I thought the call had dropped. You stole my honeymoon money," she whispered. "It wasn't your money," I corrected her, my vow. Eyes hard as flint. "It was my money. It was a gift. And gifts can be rescinded when the recipient spits in the giver's face. You have a return flight in 2 weeks. I suggest you find a hostel or call Tyler. Maybe he can send you some good vibes to pay for a room. I will never forgive you for this, she hissed. I will tell Mom, I will tell everyone what you did. Tell them, I said. Tell them everything. Tell them about the rehearsal dinner. Tell them about the seating chart. Tell them why I did it. See whose side they take. I hung up the phone. Mark was sitting up watching me. She's there. She's there, I said, and she's on her own. The fallout was, predictably, nuclear. By the time the sun came up, my mother was at my front door, eyes red from crying. Tiffany had called her, spinning a tale of victimization that painted me as a monster who had lured her to Asia only to pull the rug out for no reason. How could you? Mom asked, sitting at my kitchen table, twisting a tissue in her hands. She's your baby sister. She's stranded. She says they're staying in a backpacker motel with no air conditioning. It's her honeymoon, Harriet. Did she tell you why? I asked, pouring coffee. She said you were jealous, Mom said. She said you were mad about where you sat. I wasn't mad about where I sat, Mom, I said. I pulled out my phone. I had taken a picture of the seating chart. I slid the phone across the table. I was mad that she erased my husband. Mom looked at the photo. She squinted at table 9. And this, I said, pulling up the screenshot from the venue website and the email from the coordinator confirming the capacity was 50, not 20. She lied to you. She lied to Dad. She told you the fire marshal wouldn't let Mark come to the dinner. The truth was, she wanted Sarah's fling, Tyler, to have Mark's seat. She lied to your face to exclude your son-in-law. Mom stared at the evidence. The fire marshal excuse had been the only reason my parents had gone along with excluding Mark. They hated conflict, but they respected rules. Seeing that the rule was a lie, a manipulation designed to hurt Mark, broke something in her defense of Tiffany. She invited that boy Tyler instead of Mark, Mom asked quietly. Yes, I said. And at the wedding, she came up to me not to apologize, but to ask for $500 cash for the band tip, after putting us by the kitchen door. Mom put her head in her hands. I didn't know about the venue capacity. I believed her. I know you did, I said gently. That's why she does it, because you always believe her. But I'm done paying for the privilege of being treated like an ATM. Tiffany is an adult. If she wants a 5-star honeymoon, she can pay for it. If she can't afford it, she can come home. Tiffany and Chad did not come home early. They were too proud. Instead, they spent 2 weeks in a budget guest house in Cuba, far away from the luxury of Nusa Dua. From what I heard through the grapevine, it rained for half the trip. Tiffany didn't post a single photo for the rest of the honeymoon. When they returned, the reality of their financial decisions hit them. They had blown their cash gifts on the business class upgrade, expecting a free stay. They came back to credit card bills for the wedding extras Tiffany had insisted on and no savings to cover them. Tiffany tried to start a smear campaign against me on Facebook. She wrote a long, vague post about toxic family members and betrayal. It backfired. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Our cousins, who had been at the wedding and seen the seating chart, and who had seen Tyler behaving like a fool while Mark sat quietly in the back, saw right through it. One of my aunts commented, "Family is about respect, Tiffany. Maybe you should reflect on how you treated your sister before you ask for sympathy." Tiffany deleted the post an hour later. 2 months after the wedding, Mark and I were sitting in the lounge at JFK International Airport. We weren't going to Bali. Bali felt tainted now. Instead, we were heading to Florence. "You have the boarding passes?" Mark asked, checking his pockets for the 3rd time. "I have them," I smiled, patting my bag. "And the hotel, the one with the view of the Duomo." "Confirmed," I said, "paid in full." Mark leaned back in his chair, a contented sigh escaping his lips. He looked younger, lighter. The weight of trying to please my family, of trying to fit into Tiffany's aesthetic, was gone. We had effectively gone low contact with her. We saw my parents separately. The dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the fixer. I was just Harriet. "You know," Mark said, taking my hand, I never really cared about the rehearsal dinner, but I care that you stood up for me. That meant more than any trip. I know, I said, squeezing his hand tight. But the pasta in Italy is going to taste a lot better knowing we aren't paying for someone else's mistake. To table 9, Mark joked, raising his water bottle in a toast. To table 9, I agreed. May we never sit there again. We boarded the plane, turned left into business class, and didn't look back.